for the power of my God. So I release all doubt, fear, and worry, and what have you. And I remove anything that gets in the way of my conscious connection and my conscious contact with God. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. But what is happening, God, is that I stand in the light of my need. What is happening is that I keep my love cup filled. I keep my love tank full, and I'm energized, geared up, and ready to accept the miracle that is my life today. So it is from this place of awareness and divine understanding that I move and have my being. It is from this place that I know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in life. That I know this truth for you, that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. That we're together, brought together by divine appointment right here, right now, to celebrate and to be in remembrance of who and whose we are. That we are a legacy of divinity. That we are radiant beings of light. That we are warriors of love. That we are powerful in our knowingness of the God that lives within. So it is from this place I say that we come together, that we prepare as we are ignited, and that we are spirited by the message of Pastor Brett's word and Pastor Yolanda's word today. That we are sparked and inspired by the music. That we are uplifted in the love that we receive, and the love that we receive with the love that we give. That we are here, prepared, ready to do, be, and have an experience all of the love that God is over every aspect of this service today. Heavenly goodness, I'm so grateful to give thanks and praise for answered prayers. I'm so grateful to give thanks and praise for joy, for peace of mind. I'm grateful to give thanks and praise for the days unfolding. I am grateful to give thanks and praise for all miracles today. So with that, I release this word back to the mind of God that made it so. And I release, knowing that it is already done, and more done. Know with me as we celebrate today. Amen. Amen. Ashe. Ashe. And so it is. So it is.
So we celebrate being right here, right now, in the present moment. The past is gone, the future is yet to come, and we are here now. Yes, yes? I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm in the present moment now. What a joyful place I found. Here in the present moment now. I am. You'll know this. Here in the present, I'm so home. Here in the present, all my giants fall. Here in the present, I will feel so strong. Here in the present, all my giants.
Good morning, Sia. How you doing? How are you being? Great. How are you feeling? I'm happy to be here with you. My name is Pastor Yolanda. On behalf of myself and Pastor Greg, welcome, welcome, welcome to Celebration Spiritual Center, where we celebrate the sense of God, whatever you call God, in, through, and as you. There is nothing but God, and it is good. This goodness that I speak sits right where you sit. It breathes right where you breathe. The heartbeat that is yours, its heartbeat.
Take that in, and that the goodness of God woke up with you this morning. This love presence speak of did not trip over you and land just on your neighbor. It sits right where you sit. And if you're not familiar with the kind of God that loves you unconditionally, well, welcome here. This God that I speak of is just energy all the time, unconditionally loving you. You know the way you want someone to do. It does it automatically. It does keep a list of your mistakes. It's not Santa Claus keeping a naughty and a list. It is unconditional love. It created you whole, perfect, and complete, and it never changed mind about you. Take that in. No matter what you're going through, what you believe about you, this life force knows the goodness of you and your sinlessness. That's why we celebrate, because we see you the way God sees you. Perfect, whole, and complete. CSC, we also believe something. Everything is spiritual, and that would include your smart devices. So what I need you to do is spiritualize your cell phone. What does that mean, Pastor Yolanda? That means vibrate. But if it moves you or touches you, put it out there on Facebook and Twitter. Let people know where you stand and where you reside in consciousness, because you never know. Course in Miracles says it, all minds are joined. So you never know how you're going to impact another life. Put it out there. And if you receive one of these blue connection cards on your way in, please turn it over and fill it out with your email address. Drop it in with your offering. And we'll put you on our mailing list, because we are quickly making our way into year 7 at CSC. 7 years of remembering, reminding, and unlearning the things that no longer serve you. Please make sure you're on our mailing list so that we can keep in touch. And finally, when we were in the process of saying yes to CSC, PG and I, we said we wanted to create a place that felt so good it would feel like home. And that when you came to this place for the very first time, you would never be a visitor. If anything, you're a guest in our home and in our heart. And
Yes. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. So there's a question that comes up from time to time. As you may know, I'm sure most everyone here, as I'm looking at faces, we end our prayers very specifically with three phrases. Amen. Amen. Ashe. And so it is. Now, amen simply means it is so. So the reason why we end with amen, it's the thing that we have affirmed and declared to be, it is. And we add a force multiplier. We add ashe, which means it definitely will be so. Because I'm so confident and sure about this word that I have spoken, ashe. It definitely will be so. And finally, and so it is. And so I am endeavoring to stand with each and every one of you, whatever it is that you're praying about, praying around, praying through. To that I say amen, I say ashe, and so it is. Whatever it is. Everybody say amen. 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 Ashe. Ashe. It definitely will be so. It definitely will be so. And so it is. And so it is. Ashe. 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 And so it is. And so it is. We're going to sing that again. Amen. 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 Whatever it is you are speaking over your life, to that I say amen. Amen. I'm in agreement with you. Amen. 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 talking about. Whatever it is you've been celebrating, to that I say amen. I say, oh, I say, oh, I say, so it is, so it is. I'm standing with you. I say, I'm in agreement with you. I say, I'm in agreement with you. So it is, so it is. We're gonna say it again. And the church say, amen. Hey, hey, amen. Everybody say, amen. Amen. Everybody say, amen. Amen. Oh, I'm believing, I'm knowing it will be so. So, yeah. To see it. And after we've affirmed that word, we just say it's so it is. Oh, so it is, so it is, so it is, and so it is, so it is, so it is, so it is, and so it is, so it is, so. When we pray, we do not bargain. The thing is, we know the truth. It is already accomplished. I rest in the fit of this knowing. I rest in the finished work of this thought. I relax and I allow, because I know it is done. Because I know it. Yes, I know it is done. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, it is done, done, done. Done, 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 done. And so it is.
Celebration Spiritual Center. My name is Denise, and my favorite word this month is delicious. Yes. So I am so happy to be all this deliciousness this morning. One thing you'll learn about CSC is that our vision, mission, and purpose guide everything we do. The vision. Celebration Spiritual Center is a God experience that turns on the heart, the mind, and the soul of the world. A God experience is the realization of oneness that transcends material sense. Our mission and purpose is to awaken the world to the presence of God within and all around us, to celebrate this truth as one family, to embody unconditional love, to equip humanity to live our greatest lives, and to serve all creation. The centering thought for this month's meditation is God's peace and joy are mine. And the song for the month is In the Peace of God. We continue the February message series, You Better Work. Truth Principles for Successful Living, Part 2.
Yes.
In the book, Working with the Law, Dr. Raymond Hollowell writes, every idea and mental picture is its soul. The law does not question or challenge the kind offered or planted, and then proceed to materialize it into a visible form. There is a definite something that is always at work, responding to some call it spirit, some call it the universe. Ancient wisdom teaches us that law is always available, always responding. The circumstances, lives in our world seem to reflect this is a result of our misunderstanding of the law. In order to work with the law, we must develop a clear understanding, void of superstition, about what it is, what it does, how it works, and how to work it. This month, we continue with our 3-part series inspired by working with the law. Prepare your heart and mind to receive and important to apply these truth principles. As you come to know the law, you can work the law. Pastor Greg's topic today is God Bless the Child. It's time for your CSC news and updates. Come get clarity about what's going on in your life. Pastor Greg and Pastor Yolanda are here to support you in applying what you learn at CSC to your daily life experiences. Join us today at 1 p.m. for the God Talk, where no question is off limits. Remember to pick up your giving statements. Thank you for the financial contributions given to CSC in 2019. Giving statements are available now through the end of February. So if you're a CSC member or have contributed at least $250, more details to come. Text to give is fast, it's easy, and it's secure. Text your dollar amount to 347-744-9500, then follow the prompts. Minimum donation is $10. Again, the number is 347-744-9500. Try it out today. And finally, just a few housekeeping reminders. Food and drink is not allowed in the sanctuary except for water. However, please make sure that your beverage is covered. Also, there is no audio or video recording permitted during service. And finally, thanks again for celebrating with us. See you next week.
Thank you, Denise. Delicious, Denise. Well, we've come to the time in our service that we dedicate to ourselves. Many people would call taking time for self selfish. I call it self-full. Full of the self that is God, full of the self that is true about you. And letting go of the ideas of separation, of lack of and ultimately of fear. When we look out at the external world, we see a lot of things that would potentially, in our minds, given to me at birth, actually prior to, and never taken away from me. Now my focus can go elsewhere, and it can seem to take that joy and that peace, but been gifted something, and God doesn't give gifts to take them away. If you've ever experienced peace in your life, joy in your life, it wasn't temporary. It wasn't given to you by accident. It is always available. And so we take time during our service to meditate. Joy and peace are ours. We might have questions. We might even have some doubts. And we just have to remember and bring our feet up with our eyes. These external eyes, we open the internal sight, the internal awareness of those presence. And our feet that are connected to the floor are connected to the ground of all being. And from this place, we just notice our breath. Each breath relaxing us a little more. Each breath signaling the body, it's okay. You're safe. And with the breath flowing, we bring our focus to the feet that are connected to the earth, to the core, and beyond. We're held by something so we can relax our feet. And as we relax to the sounds outside the room and the sounds in the room, energy begins to collect underneath our feet to buoy us, uplift, inspire, and relax us. Imagine the energy flowing across the ankles. Relax the ankles. Energy of the shins and calves. Relax the shins and the calves. The more we notice the inside, the more the outside relaxes. Send the energy across the thighs. Relax the thighs. The warm flow of energy travels towards the hips. The seat of our joy, we relax the hips. Surrender the lower half of your body now to the floor, to the core, and beyond. As Kundalini energy rises, it crosses each chakra. Traveling up the spine. Light fills our body. We imagine the light flowing out the crown of our head. An open channel for love. An open channel for peace. And we give permission for peace and joy to enter our body now, flowing down through the crown, across the third eye, throat opens, across our shoulders, and they relax. Energy flows down our arms and out our fingertips. In your mind, see this vessel open and available. Light pouring in and out, uninterrupted. Just like the breath, nice and easy. Now we begin to bring our focus to the right side of the body, this collective body. And together, breathe in and up the right side. Breathing in. Hold it there. Exhale down the right side of the body. Inhale up the right side, the left side. Exhale down the right. Inhale up the right. Exhale down the left. Inhale out the left. Exhale few more rounds on your own. In and up and down. Imagine being surrounded by the energy that we create together. Beautiful full breath. Beautiful peaceful breath. Some more. Last time. And now, bringing that energy front and center. Let's all breathe in through the low belly. Inhale through the low belly. Hold it there. Anything that you're holding, open the mouth and release them. Inhale through the low belly, now expanding up through the rib cage. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. Last time, inhale all the way up through the heart now. The altar to the divine. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. Every care, every worry. Let the breath. And all the way up. Hold it there. New set point, new reality. Close the lips. Exhale through the nose. This is how we will breathe for the remainder of our meditation. In and out through the nose. Each breath remembering that we have been gifted joy and peace. It flows on the breath. Reminding us that we are home. Each breath freeing us a little more to relax into the peace of God. We learn now to rest.
Teach me to rest in the unknown, remembering that your hand I hold.
Nice and easy.
How can I ever be alone in the peace of God?
I may not have the words,
Words sometimes fail. How can I ever be alone in the peace of God?
take these words again.
Teach me to rest in the unknown, remembering that your hand I hold. How can I ever be alone in the peace of God?
That the Lord is there, God is there.
Words sometimes fail me, but I know in the silence I am home. How can I ever be?
Water to the time wanders, it's okay. Bring it back to the truth that God's peace and joy are mine. And let every voice, but the voice that is God, love, let it be still now.
people that are taking this long weekend to celebrate love. We had I guess a double vibration. Friday being Valentine's Day, and Friday also being the day that's ruled by the planet Venus. And Venus, of course, signifying love and lovers and loving and romance and all those wonderful things. And it's a long weekend, tomorrow's a holiday. So I thought it was appropriate to take this time to celebrate love with a little slow jam. you all. It's good to be here with all of you. So as you already heard in the announcements, we are in our series. We're in the second part of a three-part series, You Better Work, Truth Principles for Successful Living. We started in the second part of the series in week 1, looking at the law of receiving, from the topic, to get, you must give. Last week, we looked at the law of increase, or the law of praise, or the law of gratitude. And we spoke from the topic of appreciation appreciates. So today we're going to look at the law of compensation, which I think is interesting in how Hallowell talks about this law and writes about this law. And as I was looking at this chapter and really preparing for this chapter, the thing that I could not let go of is I just kept hearing Billie Holiday in my mind. In 1939, Billie Holiday wrote a song with her co-writer, Arthur Herzog. And she says that the song was inspired by an argument that she got into with her mother over money. And in that argument about money, her mother said, God bless the child that's got his own, some way, shape, or form. And she began to develop this song, Them That's Not Shall Lose. So the Bible says, it still is news. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. And Hallowell echoes the very sentiment, the very idea in this chapter on the law of compensation. Just briefly, we read a couple things in this chapter on the law of compensation. First, we read, the law helps those who help themselves. The law of compensation always works that way. Further in the chapter, we read, and the law is that he who becomes better will attract the better and be given greater things to do. That sounds just like what Billy was saying. And then he also writes, Jesus included this law as a supreme factor in his doctrine. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Judge not, that ye be not judged. With what measure ye meet, it shall be measured unto you. And Paul said, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. God bless the child that's got his own. But it's interesting, and I think it's something that's very important for us to just understand from the very premise, in the very beginning, because I think this is one of the reasons that some people are attracted to New Thought principles, and also how New Thought principles are misused and misunderstood. Because the roots recognize that bootstrap thinking and that talk is criminal, cruel, and absolutely incorrect. Because the truth is, no one in history, in the history of humankind, no one has succeeded on their own or by their own effort. It's literally impossible. I say it all the time, being self-made is the biggest lie on planet Earth. It sounds nice and it's wonderful for people's biography, but it simply ain't true. Tain't necessarily so, to quote another song, right? Now, metaphysically, we understand that there is a law that's at work. This is what we've been talking about from the beginning of this series last month to now. And so when we understand that it's impossible, this idea of just getting it for ourselves as though it's us and us alone that's doing it. We recognize that there's a law that's at work that we're working with, Jesus' way. It is not I, but the Father within me that doeth the work. So it's important for us to understand as we dig into deeper what the law of compensation is about. The law of compensation has nothing to do with pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It has nothing to do with, I made it out, why can't you? Because if you think you made it out on your own, you're still in jail. You're in prison, in truth. Right? So let's look deeper, because there is a law of compensation and it does work. So what is this law of compensation all about? And what does God bless the child that's got his own mean in the context of this law? And so first, I want to look at the meaning, the definition of compensate, because it tells us something very interesting when we look at the meaning of compensate. Oftentimes, we would think about compensation simply as getting paid, right? Because that's right, your compensation. We use that word a lot. But compensate as a transitive verb means to be equivalent to or counterbalance, right? So when something compensates for something, it's equivalent to, it counterbalances, as in her virtues compensate her faults. You understand that? Mm-hmm. But as an intransitive verb, it means to supply an equivalent, or used with or used for, as in compensate for his feelings of loneliness by assertions of superiority. So when we look at this idea, when we're talking about the law of compensation, the principle then is that the law an equivalent or a counterbalance. That's compensation. But an equivalent of what? It's an equivalent of our thought. It's an equivalent of the pattern of our thought system, and our belief. This is what the law of compensation is. The law is always supplying an equivalent and a counterbalance to what it is thinking, what it is that we're believing, what it is that we're knowing, that we're taking for granted, what it is that we're calling fact, what it is that we're accepting, whatever that is, and that becomes the system of our belief, the pattern of our belief. The law is always supplying an equivalent or a counterbalance to it. It must be so. So if the equivalent then is of our thoughts, if the equivalent is of our pattern of belief and our belief system, Mama may have her thoughts and Papa may have his thoughts, but God or the law only responds to your own thoughts. Your mother and your father can't think for you. There's a lot that they can do for you. There's a lot that elders in your life, or even your government in that matter, right? Or anything that you would think that is a provider in your life can provide for you, but it can't think for you. And the law is responding to your. Hollowell puts it this way in the text. He says, our own comes to us, and only what is our own. That's compensation. And so further in the text we read, then what's very important, if we understand that this is what the law of compensation is about, that there's always a supplied equivalent of what we're thinking. The prisoner, there is no other way out. Neither can you be free of your bonds except through the key, through the right use of your thought. This is the key to successful living. He goes on and he says the key to successful living is the right adjustment of your thoughts. If your thoughts are constructive and proper, you cannot remain imprisoned. If you are dissatisfied and unhappy, you will be inspired for something better. Now, I want to say something here because I think it's important. As you're reading the text, and do we have the book yet? Has everybody gotten the book? You can go on social media, you can go on Facebook, you can subscribe to our emails. We're sending out the link. Please get the book because it's something that you want to study and you want to read. Now, if you're reading and studying the text, what you may find by the time you get to this chapter and really even last, it starts to feel a little repetitive. Yes, yes? Anybody reading and you feel like he's saying the same thing? Because where we started looking at aspects of this one thing. So it's inevitable that we're going to kind of say some of the same things since we're really only talking about one thing. We got that? Now, we also recognize that repetition is important for all of us because as we continue to receive and read and repeat and receive and read and repeat and receive and read and repeat, we actually start to get it. You don't get it the first time you read it. So it's something here that he says that's very important because it takes us back to where we've been in the previous weeks, where we looked at the law of thinking, right? That our thinking must be constructive, right? That's one of the things that we talked about. If your thoughts are constructive and proper, you cannot remain in prison. And what does it mean for your thoughts to be constructive? It means that you're incrementally making changes, right? That how you're thinking today is not how you were thinking yesterday. How you're thinking this month is not how you were thinking last year this time, right? That's constructive thought. And so your life will begin to outpicture based on that. So then the question becomes, well, how do we go about successful living? He's saying that this is the key to successful living, to adjust our thoughts and to think properly and to think constructively. How do we increase our success? Maybe we're experiencing success in our life, but we want more. That's inevitable. We desire more. How do we use our understanding of the law of compensation? I think this is important. I was reminded of something that Angela Davis says. She said that we have to talk about liberating minds as well as liberating society. And so when we think about our individual world and our collective world, it's important that we're looking at this aspect as well as understanding all of the things that we must put feet to our prayers, all of the ways that we may need to protest, that we may need to show up, or where we need to give, or how we need to show up in our lives. There's doing that needs to happen, right? But being is what's first important. Thinking and getting it in our minds and developing this consciousness. Why? Because we understand how compensation works. Right? That the law supplies an equivalent or counterbalance to what we're thinking. So if we're just out there doing and haven't done the work of our thinking, what do you think you're going to get? So Hollowell gives us a few things, and I'm only going to highlight maybe two things today. But one, he talks about the power of excellence, which I think is important. And I believe that this is something that we understand, and we're going to take it a little step further. So perform your task to the best of your ability, or when you are thorough in your work and do it well, you infallibly bring out the best there is in you. Otherwise expressed, you grow more capable and efficient. You become better and thereby show your growing superiority. And the law is that he or she who becomes better will attract the better and be given the greater things to do. Right? Now, we all know that on some level. We've all been taught that, right? That you do a good job and doing your best leads to greater and greater opportunities and greater results. Yes, yes. I often think about, and my dad and I, we laugh about it now because I remember being a child and doing my homework. And, then I bring it to my dad so he could check it or, help me out maybe. And it might be messy or, not very neat. And he's like, you gonna put your name on that? He said, that's your name. This is your work. This represents you. You're putting your name on this? And I'm like, yeah. Right? And so he has to teach me. He's like, no, you're not going to put your name on this. Even if the answers are correct, rewrite it, make it neat, et cetera, right? And so we laugh about it now because I'm so very conscientious and things that is beneath my idea of who I believe I am, right? I would never do that. I can't even access that anymore, right? And that's why we can laugh about it, and I'm grateful to him for instilling that in me, right? And teaching me that, right? Which has helped me in so many areas of my life. Understanding this underlying idea, right? That when we do our best, when we take any task, no matter what it is, to the very best of our ability, when we are thorough in our work and do it well, we infallibly bring out the best there is in us. And then otherwise, it goes on, we become better and thereby show our growing superiority. And the law is that she or he who becomes better will attract the better and be given the greater things. But what I've also come to understand, there's a lot of people that are doing their best. There's a lot of people out here that are really doing excellent work and still aren't getting ahead. Right? There are a lot of people that are doing that. And so it really going on. If this is the law, and the law works the same for everyone, what's really going on? Now we read further in the same paragraph. He says, in other words, she or he who more than fills their present place will sooner or later be advanced. Were it not for this principle, there could be no progress, no growth, no development, no evolution. Now, this is a deep principle, and I hope you can hear it, right? Because what's really going on, part of the reason why so many people, we learn the idea, as my father taught me, to operate in excellence. We learn the idea that everything that you do represents you in some way, and so you should write neatly, you should submit your papers in a way that's efficient and elegant, right? All of that's true. However, if we're just doing that from this space of manipulation without first having the conscious knowing that who and what I am, right? Operating from the place of worthiness and operating from a knowingness that I'm divine, right? That I'm holy, all of these good things, then it is out of that I'm actually expressing the goodness that I am as this paper. I'm expressing the goodness that I am as this task that I'm accomplishing. I'm expressing the good that I am as I show up at work. I'm expressing the good that I am. I'm not manipulating my boss and doing excellent work because I want them to give me more money. I'm not showing up this way in a relationship so they can treat me well, right? And so what begins to happen, what's so very important, there's a couple things, and it kind of even goes back to what we've been talking about in the previous weeks, but one of the things that starts to happen, and I invite you to go to, there's a sermon we did some years ago, Preparation Meets Manifestation. It was in a series we did on Ernest Holmes, The Basics of Science, the Science of Mind. And one of the principles that's important for us to understand is that anything that we desire to be, to do, to have in our lives, we must actually become it in consciousness. Use a demonstration where we have these marbles, and there's a vessel, and we fill the vessel with marbles, right? The marbles represents the substance of God that is ever flowing, ever available. But God can only fill the vessel at the level and the size that it is. And many times we want more from God, right? We want more from life. We want to be more. We want to do more. We want to have more, but we still have the consciousness of that smaller vessel. And so to actually expand our experience of life, we must become the larger vessel. And so this is really what's happening here when we think about what the law of compensation is talking about in terms of the power of excellence. The reason that we want to operate in excellence, because if we have an aspiration for more, we have to begin to become that thing in consciousness immediately, right? We have to begin to live in that. So when he says you become better and thereby show your growing superiority, and then the law is that she who becomes better will attract the better, what it's really saying is that as you expand your awareness, your consciousness, the vessel that you are able to receive more of this substance that we call God, and then you begin to express more, and you begin to have more, and you begin to do more, and you begin to be more. So then he says, she or he who fills that present place will sooner or later be advanced. It's inevitable. Were it not for this principle, there would be no growth, no progress, no development, no evolution. Now what happens for many of us, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, we that's told all the time, oh, they won those millions and now they're broke. Because of this law, right? The law compensates, right? The law always supplies an equivalent. Not supply the counterbalance, the consciousness, the thought system, that law of compensation, you will inevitably, by law, come back into balance with where you really are in consciousness. This is very important. So when we understand how this law works, then it's like, okay, well, what is the consciousness that I must provide? What is the consciousness that I must be living in? What is the consciousness, the knowingness that I must be living in, so that when that $1 million check shows up, I can hold it? Preparation meets manifestation. Go back to that sermon. So one of the other things here to understand the law of compensation, and this is where we get into spiritual mastery, I think, understanding that all experience is for our good. Yes, we sang I bless it last week. I bless it, I bless it. It's rooted in that concept. Here we read, the law that we reap what we sow is mathematically accurate. Each experience through which we pass operates ultimately for our good. If we attract the unpleasant, it is often because some dormant or neglected phase of our nature needs to be awakened and developed. Also, we learn from the experience to create something better. So compensation, again, it gives us the equivalent or the counterbalance. And this is a beautiful way to start to think about the contrast or the unwanted in our lives. If we attract the unpleasant, it is often because some dormant or neglected phase of our nature needs to be awakened. We call this the still small voice. There's always something that will show up in our lives that's just gently knocking on the door. Hello, pay attention. What's also interesting about this, and it's important to understand how the law works, because Ernest Holmes teaches, and it's important to understand this, that love and law and love, it's the same thing. And we must understand that law is love. It is loving, unconditionally loving. And so if it were not loving, it wouldn't do something like this. This is one of the most loving things that could ever happen. To be made awakened. It's incredibly loving of the mirror in your home to reflect back to you, oh, move your hair this way, that way, right? We understand that, and we appreciate that. And so the law of compensation is doing that. Not only is the law of compensation giving us the counterbalance of what it is that we're believing, and so going back to that example, okay, I don't have a terrible, right? Right? And it's not doing something to us in that sense. But what we understand, because this counterbalance and this equivalent is always working, what it's also doing is showing us the counterbalance or the equivalent of that thing that needs to be changed, of that thing that needs to be shifted, of that thing that needs to be developed, that thing that needs to be awakened. And so, as Hallowell says, we learn from experience to create something better. And I would say also we learn from experiment to create something better, right? Because life is, there's no God in the sky that's judging us or trying to test us or make sure that we learn the lesson. But at every point in life, there's an opportunity to learn and shift and change. We make a mistake. Oh, I'm going to do it differently, right? You're writing on a piece of paper with a pencil. You misspell a word. You turn the pencil around. You erase, right? Now, if you miss that mistake and you hand in the paper, teacher do. Your teacher edits it and says, hey, no, go back, do it again. And that's all that's happening in life. That's all this counterbalance is, this supplying and this equivalent. That's all it really is. Now we go a little further. Hence, the degree of contentment and satisfaction attained in whatever sphere of life we may dwell is largely dependent upon our ability to use constructively the experiences of life. For in every case, the law of attraction will only bring what may serve us in our upward development. And this is why I say this part here is really about spiritual mastery. When you understand that everything that shows up in your life is here to serve your upward development, everything. Everything. Now, you can't say that to everybody. There was a sister I saw on Twitter. She posted yesterday. She said that her boyfriend took her out for Valentine's Day, took her to see the photograph. Go see the photograph if you haven't seen it. It's awesome. Took her to see the photograph on Valentine's Day. Came home and broke up with her. That's terrible, isn't it? Now, I didn't respond to her tweet because, see, I live in this consciousness. I recognize that in every case, what shows up, it's here to serve our upward development. I know it doesn't look like it. I know it hurts. If I knew her personally, the first thing I would say is live in the emotion of it. Cry. Do what you need to do. And get off of Twitter. Because everybody was, oh, he's trash, girl. You can do better. Blah, blah, blah. And people were sharing their stories that were worse than hers. So know this, we don't spiritually bypass. So I feel the emotion, live in it. But when she's ready, then we can have a conversation. Because we can understand something powerful. And I say this often, life is not happening to you. Life is not just happening for you, but life is happening through you. And this is what the law of compensation is saying. If the law of compensation is supplying an equivalent or a counterbalance to what we're thinking, that's not about for us. That's about through us. That it's only supplying what it is that we're thinking. So God bless the child that's got her own. God bless the child that is now operating in a consciousness that understands who and what she is, and now understands that even when the contrast, even when the unwanted, even when the devastating, even when the debilitating shows up, there's an underlying knowing that maybe there's something within me that needs to be awakened. We talked about it in December, the silent night of the soul. Now, the truth is of life, you don't have to have a dark night of the soul. The reason that we teach A Course in Miracles, because if you sit in Pastor Yolanda's class and deal with them first 50 lessons, that's literally a deliberate dark night of the soul, right? Because what it's getting you to do is question reality, question what you held to be true, and release those thoughts and develop, as the Course is clear, a new thought system. And so we go further. To interpret this law in a simple form, it should be stated that whatever we attract, we require. And whatever we need is always good. This is a correct attitude to adopt because all experience is for our good. And we must be able to see it in that light. Now, again, I say this is the path of spiritual mastery. And please don't beat yourself up, because this is part of what happens. We get close to these teachings, we start to understand it, and we don't move to this place and they're like, oh no, I'm so bad, I don't understand this. I should have known this was operating through me. Oh, I forgot about the law of compensation. Don't do that to yourself. Because what do we go back to? We learn from the experience to create something better. We're always in experience. We're always in experiment. And so we simply learn. There is nothing that is invalid or unnecessary. The correct attitude to adopt is that all experience is for our good, and we must be able to see it in that light. I'm so grateful for the mistakes I made years ago and the ways I made decisions out of unworthiness and, the ways I pretended, and I'm grateful for the mask that I held up and thought I needed to hold up. I'm grateful for all of that foolishness that I was running around here doing, because it helped me understand how the law works. It helped me understand exactly what was going on, that I was receiving the counterbalance and the equivalent of my thoughts. Jesus even demonstrated this beautifully. If you know the story, before he's betrayed and before he's taken in and arrested, in the Garden of Gethsemane, of course, we have the beautiful moment where he's talking to God and talking to his Father and says, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Right? And then the next scene in the Gospel according to Matthew, Judas shows up. Judas shows up with the people to arrest him. And Jesus' first word is friend to Judas. That's his first word. You only find that in the Gospel of Matthew, but it's one of the most powerful things I've ever read. He said, now, he knew what was happening. He knew this person, this person that he had taught and sat with and cared for and made fish and loaves multiply so he could eat, like this person. This person that he had slept with and traveled with betrayed him. He knew that. He knew what was happening. That's why he was having the moment in the garden with God, like, I really don't want to do this. Please take this away from me. But that person he called friend. He could only call that person friend because he understood that life or the law of attraction or the law itself will only bring what may serve our upward development. He recognized that by calling Judas friend, he was going to be able to transmute that energy and to move into the consciousness of the resurrection. And so Hollowell writes, learn to think constructively of all persons, all things, all events, and all circumstances. Appraise them from the ideal point of view. As you do this, you will gradually transform your whole existence for the better. These are the means whereby you may steadily promote your welfare and advancement. As you train yourself to mentally look for the good, you will move towards the good. And as you form higher and higher and larger conceptions of the good, these elements will begin to find expression in your words, in your acts, your character, your person, your talents, your powers, your attainments and achievements. That is, all things in your life will commence to improve as the direct result of your improved thinking. If you just do this, if you made this the truth of your life, your daily practice, your daily experience, learning to think constructively of all persons, learning to see the highest and best in everyone, regardless of whether they're living up to the highest and best of who and what they are, learning to see and know the highest and best of every institution, even when they're not seen. See, we're in Black History Month, I'm going to talk about it. It's very important, and I think it's so critical why I am grateful to be the descendant of enslaved Africans. And I'm even so grateful for documents that were created that founded this country that did not include my ancestors, because what is so powerful and so beautiful is that there was a willingness in the mind. There was a willingness in the mind of those that were enslaved and later freed to hold the United States of America up to its highest ideals. See, those words, we hold these truths self-evident that all men, women, children, black, white, whatever persuasion we may be, are created and endowed with certain inalienable rights. We, the people, there is no other qualifier. We is all. And there was a willingness, there was a power, there was a knowing to hold the United States of America to that highest ideal. No matter what, this is part of what's happening right now in this country, right? That we still have to hold that highest ideal. We can easily move into an all is lost as we have the dictator in chief in office right now. It's very easy to do that. But we must hold all persons, all things, all events, all these institutions that have been founded upon truth, founded upon truth ideas, even when the people that wrote them were fallible. So we must learn to do the same in our individual lives, to hold the highest concept no matter what. We spoke to it a little bit last week with the law of praise. You can do it in relationships. Do it in all relationships, romantic relationships, family, your best friend, your coworkers. Can you begin to just look at what they're doing well and affirm, find whatever that thing is. And here's the piece, and this is why I love thinking about thinking constructively and understanding what that means. It's a gradual development. This is not an overnight get-rich-quick scheme. We don't teach that here. That's important, because that's something you can hold. Gradually move from step to step to step. And then what happens in this consciousness of good? And so the affirming words just begin to pour out of your mouth. The affirming acts and affirming character, the person you become, the talents you display, the powers and the things that you attain and the achievement, all things in your life will come. So PG, what about all the real problems in this world? Is that enough? What about the injustice and inequality in this world? No, I'm not saying that. Now, Hollowell writes this: this process does not imply, however, that you are to ignore the wrongs of life, the empty places and the undeveloped states of being, but that you are to think right through them and beyond them towards the hidden good or principle within that is ever seeking a higher and fuller expression. This is why I teach all the time that idea of, I know what I don't want, now I know what I do want. So when we're in this posture, we're in this place, and we can look at, I was sharing with Pastor Yolanda the other day, I saw a headline that said they had t-shirt weather the other day in Antarctica. It was 69 one day and 70 degrees another day. The coldest place on the planet, t-shirt weather in February. Now, we could go on and talk about what's wrong and what people ain't doing and why this senator is against this bill, right? We could go on and talk about that. But what I can begin to do, so many different things. One of the tools I love to use, I write the headlines I want to see. I keep a running list. I do that all the time to shift my consciousness. But I can also use a tool where, okay, these are the things I don't want, and so they're pointing me to what I do want, which then allows me to think right through them and beyond towards the hidden good. Because what's happening there, it's igniting our collateral imagination. What's happening, Abraham calls it a rocket of desire, right? That when we have an unwanted experience, a rocket of desire for the good thing, for the wanted thing is actually being launched in that moment. And so he writes, you will therefore cease to condemn and to criticize in a destructive manner. Instead, you will seek to bring out the good in yourself and in others, and to discover and develop greater possibilities everywhere. So then you become a solution finder instead of a problem solver. Get big and bigger and bigger. What you focus on expands. But if that's true, if I focus on solutions, solutions expand. It's a simple flip of the switch. So in closing, we read this from Hallowell, and again, I encourage you to read this in the book. There's so much more in this chapter, but I wanted to pull out some things that I think are kind of the key points beyond the repetition. Whatever we possess today is our just reward. This fact would prove hopelessly discouraging were it not that teaches us how to be friends. Discrimination proceed. If someone came to you and said, "Oh, I'm going to start an apple orchard," and you see they have orange seeds, would you look at them like they were silly? But somehow this is what we do with the seed of our thought. Oh, I'm finding a new lover, and yet we're sowing seeds of women, men ain't ... They're unavailable. There's not enough good this or good that in the world. We're saying, "Oh, I want a new job," but then we're affirming that, there are no new jobs, or nobody's paying what I want. All of these things, those are the seeds that we're sowing. But we're affirming things that we want. He goes on and he says, never make an assertion, no matter how real it seems it be to you, if you do not want it reproduced or continued in your life. A practice that Pastor Yolanda and I have, because we're human, right? And so we can get sucked in, by the news or things that are going on. And we stop ourselves and wait, all I know is all is well. I can try to know a whole bunch of other stuff, but if I start asserting other things, no matter how real it seems to be, if you do not want it reproduced or continued in your life, do not make that assertion. So I stop myself. Now, all I know is all is well. Do not say money is scarce. The very statement will send money away from you. That's the truth. Do not say times are hard. This will tighten your purse strings so tight that even God will not be able to slip another coin. It's true. If y'all never heard the story, I won't tell the whole story, but I remember. I think this was during the economic downturn in 2008. Folks in the house singing the song "It's So Cold in the D," talking about how bad life was, how the hell we gonna keep peace. And I had come to myself, I realized that every day we were laughing and joking and asserting and affirming how bad things were. We were watching our 401ks go down and all these things were happening, and we were watching other companies start to fold. I was working in publishing, and other publishing companies were starting to shut down. And that was how we were affirming our life and our day, and not sure if we were gonna eventually get laid off. And I came to myself, I said, oh my God, what am I saying? And we were singing a song. I mean, like when you put it to music, your mind, it's just playing over and over again, right? Now that works, again, the counterbalance of the law, it works both ways, right? This is why we affirm, our music is affirming, and why we put so many affirmations to song, because it sticks. And that's what we were doing. And so I came to myself and I stopped that and I let that go. And the end of the story is I got a raise and nobody else in the department did. Right? Because I shifted my thinking, right? He goes on and he says, do not say you are not loved or not interested in other people's lives. Truly, you will lose their interest and their love. I've heard that. I heard people say, yeah, I really don't like people. But they want a relationship. Yeah, I'm not really a people person. I don't like to be bothered with folk. I don't really want to be around folk. They say that and then say, but I want somebody in my bed. But it doesn't make sense. If you don't want to be around people and you don't like people, your bed is going to stay empty because the law of compensation is giving you the equivalent, the counterbalance, supplying you easily and effortlessly that empty side of the bed. Do we get it? Do we see it? Them that's got shall get. Them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and still is news. Mama may have, and Papa may have. But God bless the child that's got his own, And finally, we read in the text, only your own can come to you. And be sure that all that is yours will become manifest. It is your responsibility. No other person may share it. Your own and all of your own will come to you. The law compensates. To that we say amen. Amen. Ashe. Ashe. And so it is. So it is. So it is. Thank you, Lord.
It works in the reverse too. Your mama may not have, and your daddy may not have, but God bless the child that's got his own. So even if you didn't see it growing up, right? Even if you didn't see it growing up, that still means you can have. Even if your parents didn't give you the love you thought you deserved, you can give it to yourself because God bless the child that's got his own. And it comes to you in the equivalent of your thinking, not mama and daddy's thinking. I get it. I understand how they have influenced us and how the media influences us and how our ex influences us. But each of us has the power and the ability to create the life that we want. You transmute it. Would have been Twitter experience if that was available at the time. I ain't gonna lie, I would have probably been on there too. The ending of a relationship, I've talked about that. The energy behind the ending of that relationship, all the sadness and all the pain and all the anger and all the misery that brought. I took that energy as I traveled to North Carolina with me to find out where this man was because he had disappeared. That's before the whole gaslighting and ghosting of America happened. And I got there thinking he must be dead. He must be dead. He couldn't have just disappeared off the planet. And I got there and he was mowing the lawn. Can you imagine? He was mowing the lawn. I flew there thinking he was in danger. And he was mowing the lawn. But what I did in that moment after I said to him, this is what I said to him. He was like, oh. When I got out of the car, I said, all I said was, are you okay? That was my come friend moment. Because I knew something had to shift, and it wasn't him, it was me. He said, yes, I'm okay. I said, that's all I needed to hear. I got in the car, I went to the hotel, I cried my eyes out, and then I got out some paper. And I wrote down what I wanted. Because I was in the energy of it. I felt it so viscerally that I wrote every attribute. And I affirmed it over and over and over till I fell asleep. And when I woke up in peace, I knew that it was done. A week later, I met this man. Each of you has the ability to transmute any condition. Each of you has that ability. Nothing can stand between you and your good because the good is flowing through you. So this week, as we go out as the children of this God, blessed and highly favored, not in the old school way, remember, God bless the child that's got his own, and I'm standing in my own. I'm opening this vessel to the more. I'm being the more. I'm seeing the more, and I'm forgiving myself for the times that I didn't know. For the mistakes that I made, of course, the miracle says, mistakes are for correction, not punishment. So God is not punishing us. As Pastor Greg said, we have an opportunity to learn, heal, grow, expand. God bless you all, because you have your own. Thank you, Pastor Greg.
Yes, yes. Are happy to serve you. If you need an envelope or if you need a pen, please just raise your hand. Our ushers are happy to provide. If you would like to give online, it is very easy and simple. We appreciate you all who have already given online, those that are giving online. If you're streaming right now, you'll see the link there in the post. You can go to our website, celebrationsc.org. Scroll down to the giving section. If you would like to text to give, 347-744-9500. Text your dollar amount. It seems that this is becoming the preferred way for folks to give. People seem to love to text to give, which is awesome. It's easy, it's safe, and it's secure. And what do we say here every week? It's absolutely true, and we will continue to affirm it. What is your joy number? That's the number that you must give. There's no obligation to give. No one is guilting you into giving. That's not what it's about. But what I know is that we talked about planting seeds. When we give, we are planting seeds. Not the amount of money, but the consciousness behind it. And so I recognize that when I give every week, I give in joy, I give in love because I love to give. And as I deposit love, as I deposit joy, as I deposit a knowingness that there is more than enough, that's my experience in life. That's what I begin to receive. And so out of planting or giving that joy number, then we get to affirm this powerful truth. All the money that I use, returns to me multiplied. In a never-ending cycle, of increase, and enjoyment. With that, I call the ushers forward to take a very joyous offering.
That this day is unfolding as it should. We own the
I give my treasure, doors are opening for me. As I go right, coming right back to you, coming right back to you. Just as easy as you breathe, it's coming right back to you. Right back to you. Right.
Amazing service as always.
So today is God Talk Sunday. It's an opportunity to bring your questions, any spiritual concerns or questions you have. Maybe you hear the message and you want to know, how do I apply this to my life? Or just other principles or things are showing up and you need support. PY and I are here. It's always a healing time. And at the time, we'll start at 1:15. We'll be right here in this section of the sanctuary. It is always an awesome time. You don't want to miss it.
Absolutely. And keeping in mind that next month is anniversary, some good things coming. We'll be unfolding those as we go along. It's going to be a good time. But if anything is going to release today, like, you know what, I thought about that. I don't need this. Any worry, any fear, any doubt, please write it down and leave your worries in the back of the altar, right? Leave them there. We set that up on purpose, so you don't want to have to walk out of here with anything. And our prayer champion will pray over it all week long. Our prayer champion, LaVonda, is in this morning to pray a certain way. No begging God. No please, oh please God. We know that God is pleased. And we stand in that knowing and we pray from that place. If you need that in your life, write your worries down. Leave them on the altar and we'll pray over it all week. And when you do that, when you release it, let it go. What do we say every week?
All things are possible.
Now, all things are possible. Now, every little thing is possible. 'Cause I know I am. And I know whose I am.
Now all things are possible. Yes, everything is possible. I know who I am. Since I know everything is possible. Because I know who I am and I know whose I am. Now all things are. Yes, I know who I am. Thank you.